The No Nonsense Roundtable. It's a weekly show broadcast on Rochester, New York's 50,000-watt iHeart radio station, News Radio Wham 1180. The host, Dom Geneva, interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. What you are about to hear is a recording of a previous broadcast without the breaks and commercials. Now, here's host, Dom Geneva.
Before I introduce my guest today, I have to say that, sometimes I figure maybe I'm as smart as a person in the room. That's the best I can hope for. I am not as smart as this fella. I have to tell you right now. And if you talk about people that you know that you want to know more about and people that you should know, I think he comes under both umbrellas. And his name is Kevin Williams. And most of you know him as a local weathercaster. And welcome to the show.
Well, it is a pleasure to be here. Been a fan over the many months and years listening. And you're much too kind, my friend. But thank you. It's an honor to be here.
I've been accused of a lot of things, Kevin, but much too kind.
Not one of them.
So tell me, I have this expression. Tell me how you got here, and I don't want to hear that you drove up in a Buick, unless you have a Buick.
Well, no, I don't.
No, your life story.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you, Dom. Over the years, when I'd have the opportunity to speak at schools and to young people, I would tell them that if you can find a profession that you have a passion for first, and then make the profit, and then earn a living, you're going to be happy professionally for a lifetime. And I have been doing for over 40 years what I have always wanted to do. That is forecast, and study, and broadcast meteorology, and all kinds of venues and all kinds of places. And, I've been able to make a comfortable living by doing that. But again, it's the love, the passion of precipitation that has guided me professionally for more than 40 years. And I'm still going strong at this point.
So you wanted to do this since you were a young boy? You were interested in the weather?
My mom says back on Long Island growing up, there was one particular evening when there was a thunderstorm. I was still of the age of being in a playpen, and she was intrigued by my interest, so she took me out in the playpen on the porch, and we watched the thunderstorm come in. Now, don't try this at home. Lightning is deadly, okay? Yes. I'm not recommending that, but she knew that, I was either something was a little off on me, or I was probably going to be somewhat interested in the weather, and I think what it is people in my profession, I believe, have a defective gene. It's in our DNA that there's something about storms, something about extreme weather, something about dynamic changing weather conditions that motivates us, drives us. And I'm one of those people that has that defective gene. And lo and behold, that's where it came from, and that's where I'm going. So
when you were a young boy, you had that interest, and you got older. Are there things you used to do, the lectures you used to go to, or experiments?
Oh, gosh, yes. Yes. I visited weather people. My grandmother in Florida, we'd visit in Fort Myers, and I got to be friends with a local weathercaster named George Goldtrap, and he took me under his wing. This was in the early 70s, and I am still in touch with him today, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, I'm very blessed. And so it was a matter of meeting people in the profession. Both my mom and dad took me. My dad was a sports writer in New York. He had media contacts, so I visited weathercasters in New York. I visited universities and professors, and so in National Weather Service meteorologists worked near where my mom used to work, and they would take me under their wings. So I surrounded myself with people in the profession, asking questions and being tutored and mentored by these professionals.
And you happened to mention university, which led me to talk about how smart you are. You graduated from
Cornell.
Cornell, yes.
1981. It was one of those decisions. You make many decisions, countless decisions in the course of your lifetime, but the opportunity to go to Cornell, and it was a small enough program that allowed the undergraduates to be very involved, very hands-on, and it was just one of the greatest decisions of my life. It guided my professional career. It helped me launch my business. It was a fateful decision that, interestingly, was coincidental or accidental. Originally, I was thinking Penn State, great meteorology program, and got into Penn State. I remember when the letter came in the mail back in the days when they mailed letters, brought it to my high school, told all my friends going to Penn State. But at the last moment, my mom said, you know what? you did get into Cornell. Why don't we drive up there, drive to Ithaca, see what it's like? Well, it was an April day. It was cloudy. It was windy. It was sleeting. And I loved the place. I fell in love with the place. And I decided then on the moment, on the spot, I'm going to Cornell, and it was, as I said, just a wonderful decision for which I'm grateful.
A degree, Bachelor of Science,
Atmospheric.
That's why I don't do this for a living.
Now try and say meteorology.
Yeah,
That's
there,
even
there you
tougher.
go. How many colleges around actually offer that as a discipline?
Well, there are probably several dozen small schools like Linden State in Vermont to massive universities like Penn State, Ohio State, and your mid-sized schools like a Cornell or SUNY Albany. So you have your opportunities, depending upon the kind of campus you're looking for, to find an opportunity to study the profession.
And you were saying before the show about some activity you had there that expanded the whole program, right? Well,
I was, again, because the undergraduates had some say, a friend of mine, an Ithaca College student, and he was a broadcast major. We were thinking, how cool would it be if the Cornell meteorology students could then go across from East Hill to South Hill, where, of course, Ithaca College has a renowned broadcasting school, and do the weather on their nightly newscasts. And so, we had to lobby both the administrations, at Cornell and Ithaca College. I mean, it was a monumental effort to get them to, allow this to happen. But somehow it happened. Somehow it did. So my first TV broadcasting was at WICB TV circa 1980. But what was really nice about it is that program exists today. And there are some meteorologists at the network level at major markets that went through that program we created, that little bonding between the two schools. So it was really a career highlight for me to see so many young people take advantage and now be in such high positions, profiles in our profession.
Yeah, keep in contact with some of those people now?
I do. We're a small fraternity, but we're in touch both at conferences. By the way, do you know what meteorologists do, 1,000 of them, at an annual weather conference that we attend?
I'm afraid to ask.
We shoot the breeze, Tom. We shoot the breeze. That's what we do.
Oh, geez.
I'm sorry.
You got me on. You got me on that. So, Kevin, you have to have some names of some meteorological people that are alum of Cornell.
Oh, sure. They're everywhere. Rob Marciano is the ABC network meteorologist. You see him reporting on storms. Lee Goldberg is the lead meteorologist at WABC Channel 7. I have colleagues and friends in Boston. There are several in Hartford, in Miami, in Indianapolis, in Albany. So they're out there. I mean, it's a research university, but those of us, there was a contingent of us through the years that were interested in the forecasting, the application in real time. And they're doing some great work, and they all came through that program we started with Ithaca College.
Right, we can't call them weathermen anymore, right?
Oh, no, it's meteorologist,
Well, meteorologist, or a weather mammal. I mean, we're.
No, I think
we have to be a little politically correct here, So it's a weather mammal.
Let me think about that.
It may get to that sooner or later. You have no idea. Well, when we come back for the break, I want to talk about the difference between the different disciplines, because you don't have to be on the air to make a living out of being a meteorologist.
So true.
And that's what you're basing your business on now, and hundreds of clients. And it's a fascinating story, and we're going to hear about that right after this break. I'm Dom Genova here with Kevin Williams, a meteorologist. I'm getting better saying that word, and weather guy. And we were talking about the job itself. Being a meteorologist doesn't necessarily mean you have to be in broadcasting or TV. So what would you like to talk about first? Would you like to talk about the broadcasting and TV? Would you like to talk about the other things that you do for all your clients in the business?
It is your program. I can bloviate as much as you want.
Well, let's go chronologically.
Okay.
Tell me about how the job has changed from ever, because obviously weathercasting and forecasting and whatever it took the advent of radio, I would imagine, to make it something that was more immediate than something you saw in the papers. So when did things all change?
Gosh, well, you know what? When I started back professionally in the late 70s, early 80s, we used, first of all, on TV, magnetic symbols and chalkboards. There was very little chroma key. And weather information was very, very limited. We didn't have Doppler radar. We didn't have high-resolution satellite imagery. Weather maps came over slow-moving printers, and now, and to get data, it would take a half an hour for the teletypes to print the eastern United States observation. So now you can get the world literally at your fingertips. So the immediacy of the data, and now all those fancy-dancy graphics on TV, it's just been an incredibly accelerated progression from both the meteorological science part to the TV part now, where it's just an amazing conglomeration of technology, both aiding forecasters and aiding forecasters in the broadcasting end as well.
Well, the competition's got to be incredible. Everybody wants to know that they got the scoop on whatever's happening like 30 seconds before somebody else had it, right?
Well, there is that now, and it's be first, but you have to be accurate, and so there is that, and part of what our business does is try and give you have your phone apps and you have your ability to go on the internet, but what we still do, and there's still the need for a human being to be able to take this enormous wealth of data and break it down in a timely, succinct, inaccurate way for a client that might need very specified information to allow them to make a strategic decision to help their business progress. And so there is still very much a great competition among forecasters in that private sector, particularly where you're trying to take this data, which is now universally available, but take it to the nth degree in terms of detail and immediacy and accuracy, and then produce that for a client of some kind.
Well, it's got to be a very competitive business, either side. I mean, if you're talking about being on-air personality or accuracy of what you see electronically, or doing what you do now, you provide services for hundreds of clients.
Yeah, we have to look at huge tracts of the United States and Canada. We have people we forecast for that are sailing the oceans, the Indian Ocean. We've got people in the air. So there is. It's not just two-dimensional. It's three-dimensional. It's 24/7, and it's you have to be there. And if you're not, then somebody else will come along.
Yeah, tell me about some of the clients. I mean, not names of the clients all told, but tell me some of the industries and the things they're involved in.
Yeah, we do snow removal for airports and universities. We provide information relative to that campus or that site, when the snow is coming, when it's going to melt, when it will freeze. We have people out sailing the oceans that will take a forecast from us for the purposes of routing. We have forensic clients, which it's a whole nother realm. We're actually looking back to the previous weather and trying to. It's like a puzzle and trying to put that puzzle together, what the weather was like for the purposes of an insurance or a legal claim. So it really is a myriad of types of clients, and again, looking both forward and past. So it really covers a lot of ground over the course of a day or a week.
So you provide these services on a daily basis, these people?
Sure. I started the business at Cornell as a senior. So when my fraternity brothers were lamenting getting up for an 8 o'clock class, I was already at the weather tower at 6 a.m., doing the morning radio for some of the initial radio clients we had. And then it built from there, and then it took on, the other aspects, especially, as I said, the research on the forensic side and the forecast side, ski resorts, highway departments, aviators. It was really quite a diverse group of interests and clientele.
One question I always have is that they say that there's a European model, and you're laughing about that. Yeah.
Well, every time I mention that on a couple of radio stations I serve, they're not thinking of the European model as I'm thinking about a European model.
You're thinking of Sophia Loren? Is that
that's what they're thinking. I've got the data here. They're thinking about Sophia Loren, and so I have to bring them back to the meteorology. You see, that's my dilemma. How do you understand?
Okay, in all seriousness, there's the quote-unquote European meteorological model.
Well put.
Okay, there we go. We're not in trouble anymore. And there's the, American one?
Right.
Now they always seem to say that these guys in Europe do things better than, it's like we have this problem of self-esteem with these things. I mean, is that model actually better, or do they make that into a thing just to get your interest?
Well, my first involvement with the European model was in 1993 in March, and the European model then, coming over a paper fax machine, it predicted in 6 days, this was on a Saturday or so, that there would be this incredibly powerful storm hitting the Northeast along about March 12th or 13th. The American model had nothing. It had a beautiful, clear sailing situation. Well, as it turned out, that was the so-called storm of the century that hit 6 days later. So I became a fan of the European model in a hurry, as it was a scoop. It was a coup. It gave us information that none of the other models had. But the models, Dom, have been refined, and there are far more. It's data overload. There are multiple American models, multiple Canadian models, a European model, a UK Met model, a German model, a French model, 2 Chinese models, a Korean model. Did I mention the French model?
Yeah.
And so the point is, it can be data overload, and it is my job to break it down, to know the biases, the way the models tend to go with certain weather patterns, and to select the information that I believe is most representative of the current atmosphere and the future atmosphere, make a local forecast from it, and then share it either on air or with the client.
It sounds like you're handicapping a race.
Yeah, well, it's true. You may have one model that has a major lake effect event, another model that says no, just flurries, and you have to sort through it all, and you have to do it in real time. You got to make some decisions, and so it's still the challenge of our profession to get it right and to get it out there quickly.
Is there any really bad model you saw, or any good one? I mean, that something surprised you over the years?
Oh, there were many times the models have completely busted. We have, nobody is perfect, and nor are the models. Remember, they're programmed by human beings. People say, well, you're using a computer. How could you be wrong? The atmosphere is a chaotic place, and we only have so many observations, and there can be systems that the models don't see. And if the models don't see it at the initialization, then they can't predict it. So there is still a lot of what I call seat of your pants forecasting. You still have to say, okay, recognize the pattern, and historically, what does that pattern give to that particular area, and use that as a guide to then shape your forecast with the other data around it.
Wow. This is all fascinating stuff. We're about ready to head into another break, a news break at the bottom of the hour. And when we come back, I want to talk to you about a couple of things. One, I'm serious. I want to talk to you about what your feeling is about global warming. I mean, there's a polarizing. I work polar in there.
Nice.
Yes, and we'll talk about that and your feelings about that. But the other thing is, in a lighthearted sense, I want to talk about some of the people you've met, because you've met some very interesting people in your career.
I have.
I'm Dom Genovese, your host every Saturday from 10 to 11 on News Radio Wham 1180, and I'd like to say thank you for listening. I get a chance to meet some really nice people, like Kevin Williams here, a meteorologist and interesting fella, wonderful career. And the other thing I'd like to do is reach out to the Bob Johnson Auto Group, who sponsors the show, pays for it, lets me do what I'm doing now, and they're really good people. And go there, buy a car or a truck or get something fixed. You will get treated right. So let's talk about something, well, maybe a little bit serious. I'm going to throw a couple of words at you, and it's called global warming. Give me your...
Sure. I think it is incumbent upon all of us as residents, as inhabitants of planet Earth, to be good stewards of our planet. I personally have been a member of the Audubon Society, a Boy Scout, a volunteer for the Nature Conservancy, and even compost in the backyard all of our waste. So that is important. But the thought about the climate crisis and all that you're hearing, let me mention, Dom, that the Earth has been warming since the last ice age 20,000 years ago. It's what happens after ice ages, the planet warms. About 3,500 years ago, during the Minoan warm period, it was far warmer than it is today. It then got cooler. During the Roman warm period, 2,000 years ago, it was also warmer than it is today. 1,000 years ago, it was warmer, or at least as warm as it is today. And that was the medieval warm period. Greenland was actually green. There was actually agriculture. The Norse settlers, the Vikings, they actually farmed for a couple hundred years. Then came the Dark Ages, and the Earth got cold. And they call those warm periods climate optimums, because that's when the planet and the civilizations on that planet have flourished. They've thrived. And when it got cold, like in the Dark Ages, not so fun, not so pretty. Agriculture was a real problem. So I would submit to you that the climate has been changing forever. No tax that they've ever proposed has changed the weather. My thinking is we should mitigate for the inevitable change. The weather does change. The climate does change. So build infrastructure that can withstand changing weather conditions and storms and the rest. That's where we should be focusing, not on this idea that you can, remember, carbon dioxide is plant food. The more CO2 to a point, the greener the earth has become. It's a critical component to our well-being on the planet. And so I would submit to you that the media hyping on the climate crisis and the gloom and doom, let me tell you, currently today, global hurricane activity, below average. National tornado activity, below average. Wildfire acreage consumed, below average. The Great Barrier Reef, which was doomed, you have the coral bleaching from the warming of the waters. Well, a report just came out this past week. The Great Barrier Reef, since records been kept, serious records, 1985, has never been healthier. So that's not to say there aren't big storms and issues and floods and droughts. Of course there are. There always have been. We can't do much about them. My point is they're going to happen, so let's be prepared for them. Let's mitigate. Let's do what we can to limit the impact, the dire impact of these inevitable storms and temperature extremes.
The way that I see it, I had a friend of mine next door when I was growing up. He had a fish tank. And you couldn't mitigate just part of the fish tank. I mean, the fish tank is the fish tank. And the question I always had is there enough that you could do where we could do all we can do, but some other country is not, and so the net effect is nothing?
It's a real problem. Right now, 23 of the 25 most polluted cities in the world are in China. It is a real problem. The United States has improved our air quality, our environment. Since the EPA came along in the early 70s, we're living a relatively clean existence, and that's because of innovation. It's because of technology. It's because of advancements. And the idea that we can somehow just get rid of fossil fuels, I mean, green energy is great when it works, but when the sun doesn't shine, you've got no solar. When the wind doesn't blow, you've got no wind power. And look at the folks now going on in Europe. They have pretty much divorced themselves of a lot of fossil fuel, nuclear, and now they're suddenly finding the wind this past summer failed in the North Sea. And so wind power was way down. And if this is a cold winter coming up for Western Europe, which it might well be, you're going to hear a lot more about an energy crisis brought on, not so much by Mother Nature, but by the fact that they're too quickly trying to get rid of energy that has brought in some of the finest levels of living that this civilization has ever seen.
Well, changing the subject a little bit, before the show, we were talking that you own a snowmaking machine.
I do.
It's time to talk about the snowmaking machine.
Well, my motto, Dom, is you can never have too much snow. So,
God forbid.
Some many years ago, I did purchase a snowmaking machine. And of course, my neighbors, I live in a cul-de-sac, they thought it was absolutely Looney Tunes. Why would you make snow? And it takes effort. You just don't flip a switch. You need to be sure the pipes are the water isn't frozen, the electricity is flowing, the machine is pointed in the right direction with the wind. But anyway, so for years, I would make snow in my side yard and make a giant mountain of snow called a Mount Williams. The neighbors thought I was Looney Tunes until that machine completed its mission of making the snow mound, and suddenly our home became the neighborhood winter resort for their children to come over and tube and sled and King of the Hill and all of the rest. And suddenly, a pretty good idea was hatched, and they were all for it. Now, I must tell you, there are dangers when you make snow. You see, you have to groom and you have to watch where the snow is falling based on the wind. What I would do back in the day, I'd get home from TV midnight, and before I'd even go in, dressed in my suit and tie, I would adjust the machine that was making snow 24/7, and I would base it on my forecast. One particular night, the wind unexpectedly shifted, and my next door neighbor ended up with a pile of snow on her driveway just outside her garage. She, leaving early for work the next day, her hearing a nice clear forecast, opened the garage door and saw this mound of snow blocking her way. She had no idea until she saw my lighted snow machine next door blowing snow away. So you do have to be wary of where you're blowing your snow. But yes, I did make snow. Snow is a wonderful thing.
Right, and the neighborhood kids go play on this snow.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Well, you know what this tells me?
What is that?
You have one hell of an insurance agent.
Well, let me tell you something.
The umbrella insurance has got to be a killer.
And there's another aspect, too. When the next spring, when the water meter guy came to read the meter,
yeah.
I never forget. I walked him to the basement. I was behind him. He bent over to read the meter, and he stopped. He looked. He started tapping the dial. He looked up, tapped it again, said, "What? What? You don't have a pool? What did I have a snow machine?" Oh.
Okay. Now, where do you get a snow machine?
It's not easy. But there was a company, don't know that it still exists, based in Boston, that actually sold snow machines that were, residentially sized, not the cannons you have at Bristol Mountain or somewhere to make snow. Because I'm not the only one. I started making snow, and some of my TV colleagues across the country, they became very envious.
Yeah. So God does not do good enough of a job every afternoon at 3 o'clock with the lake effect. You have to get your own machine.
And I had snow for a month after all the snow was gone in the spring.
And if you ever get ticked off of one of your neighbors, just point it on the driveway. That's exactly. All there is to it.
There you go.
I'm Dom Genova, your host, here with my special guest today, Kevin Williams, meteorologist of some great renown. And I want to remind everybody that if you want to hear a previous show, they are all there at NoNonsenseRoundtable.com. You can download them, YouTube's, iHeart Podcasts, whatever way you want to get them. And if you do that, just hit like, and it gives me a little smile when you do that. So, Kevin, let's talk about some of the people that you've known over your, called it long and storied career.
No, you're kind.
And let's talk about your book before this segment ends.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
First of all, the people.
Yeah, interestingly, my high school, Comac, South Long Island, pumped out some notable national people, Rosie O'Donnell, Bob Costas, and she actually had an alumni show some years ago that she invited me to attend, as she was best friends with my sister, so I told Roseanne O'Donnell stories. Met Bob Costas, could not have been nicer. It's nice, Dom, when you meet someone of national fame, and they turn out to be a nice person, and indeed he was.
Like Reggie Jackson.
Yeah, right, exactly. Not.
Okay, there you go.
My dad was a sports writer in New York, covered the Giants back in the 70s and 60s. So he used to bring me to training camps. And back then, training camps were not big deals. So I hung out with the owners, the Wellington Mara, the owners' kids. We'd throw the ball around. And I met all the celebrities of the time, Muhammad Ali, Howard Cosell, because we went to a couple of Super Bowls. And we would stay at the same hotel and where the media and the players were at the time. So all those celebrities of that era, I met Joe Namath. He could not have been nicer. But maybe the person that gave me the most chills was meeting William Shatner. After Star Trek and before T.J. Hooker, he was performing in local theater in New Jersey. And my dad's contacts in media got me backstage. And there I've got a picture, a Polaroid of me meeting William Shatner. Now, the look on my face is completely ghostly because I can't believe it's Captain Kirk. And he just kept saying, "You're just relax. I'm glad to meet you." He could not have been nicer. And it was so reassuring that Captain Kirk, William Shatner, was as nice as could be.
Really?
And took the time to talk with me about I was 12 or 14 years old at the time, and I was just in utter awe as I even remember today.
That's nice, because he didn't have that reputation.
I don't know what the reputation was. I've always asked my dad, so is that player nice to you, or is he a jerk? Is that coach? And he would tell me, and I would then root for the team or the player based on, he's a nice guy. Don Drysdale of the Dodgers I met couldn't have been nicer, and so I'd root for him to pitch another no-hitter, that kind of thing.
Yeah, connecting with people. Yeah, really. You seem to be that type of guy. So let's talk about some of the other things you've written. Some books.
Yeah, 3 years going back in the 90s. I always wanted to take a collection of my columns. I wrote for the Democrat and Chronicle and Gannett for some years. We produced their weather page back in the day. So that was a wonderful kind of stamping my mark in a more formal way back before technology of today that allows you to scroll by on a screen. And of course, I should point out, I was 20 years on WHAM radio. So, back in the day. So I have many fond memories of the celebrities and of the good people, I should say, really, that passed through.
And Wham is coming up with a 100-year anniversary, somebody told me.
Yes, they are. And Wham, that ice storm of 91 really became, Wham was the beacon of information for for this community during what was one of the most cataclysmic events in New York State weather history. And I was, proud to play a small part in that role of that storm coverage.
Yeah, I wasn't here at the time, but it sounds like it was horrible.
It was the damage comparable to a hurricane in its wake in terms of the tree damage, power loss. It was, the sound of branches in the night. You thought it was gunfire. The generating systems that were arcing and energy coming out and explosion. It was just those who lived through it will never forget. And I certainly, I've got files in my office, of thick teletype reports of the storm and all the data just to have, to review at some point, because it was just an incredible event here.
Probably put in some pretty long days with that, right?
A couple of weeks, really. I mean, it was the storm coverage. It began at 5:17 Sunday afternoon, March 3rd, 17 continuous hours of freezing rain. And by that Monday morning, we had gotten everybody in to be prepared. We knew it was coming to some extent, but the nature of the cataclysmic destruction was just unimaginable.
Is there one thing that made you just go, uh-oh?
Well, yeah, I can get into the meteorology, but time is short. But we saw this oozing of cold air out of southern Ontario that was going to make it to about the Bristol Hills, and all this moisture coming in from the Ohio Valley. And that's what I talk about pattern recognition. The models really didn't have it. Weather Service didn't really have it so much. But when you see that amount of warmth and moisture that was going to override the cold air oozing down from Ontario, for me, that sent off all kinds of warning signs. So we called management that morning and said, get them in because this is going to be bad. It was going to be that bad, but we knew it was going to be bad.
That's interesting. It's like a golfer reading a green or something. Yeah,
Exact pattern recognition. It's underspoken of, but it's critical to successful forecasting.
So let's do a little retail. Why don't you talk about your website and what you do and how to get in touch with you?
Well, thank you. Well, social media is a great opportunity. And you can just follow me on Twitter. My handle is Weather by Williams, WX by Williams. That moniker, by the way, goes back to my first weather gig. That was the morning announcements at Comac High School South after the Pledge of Allegiance. Came Weather by Williams, so WX by Williams on Twitter. And I do a live Facebook, Monday to Thursday, 5 o'clock Eastern Time. Just Google Kevin Williams, meteorologist, and you'll find me there Monday to Thursday. We have a nice weather community, Dom. Many former viewers, current viewers, listeners, people from across the country. And if you have a business that needs weather-sensitive forecasting, whether it's snow removal or storm prediction or any one of a myriad of weather conditions, we're around, and I'd be happy to talk with you.
And your snow blowing machine, is it portable? It is mobile.
Yes, it is.
And I would imagine you don't hire that out.
No, it sits
that could be something for you.
You see, when the kids were small, it was a good excuse, even though I was doing it for my own fun. Yeah. But now it's long ago, so now I don't have the neighborhood kids are all grown up, so I don't have that excuse anymore.
Well, log on to snowbywilliams.com. We haven't bought the URL yet, but it has to be coming. Last words, your philosophy of life.
Well, one of those books you mentioned was entitled "Keep Looking Up," and that's one of my signature notes when I sign off on something. It's either wishing you blue skies or keep looking up, and that's kind of what it is. It's not always easily achieved, but both meteorologically, philosophically, professionally, personally, keep looking up and do everything you can in life to see the bright side, to carry on through the stormy times. And we've had them, and I hope that people can do that. Look up at the sky, appreciate the night and the day sky, and to do it in your life as well.
And I can see that you have a sunny disposition.
Absolutely.
I got you back.
Thank you. That's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
No, I got you back.
That's good.
So with that, we're going to say so long until next week. Again, thank you for listening. It makes my day to know your thoughts. So if you care to, go to NoNonsenseRoundtable.com, hit contact Dom, and suggest a guest or tell me input about what I should do to make the show even more interesting for you. And I'm always here. So thank you very much, Kevin, for coming in, and I'd like to tell you that you're going to get your wish. We're going to have more snow sooner than I ever would want to.
I think you're right about that, my friend. Thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure being here today.
Yeah, thank you very much.